Cool. So my topic, my presentation is on programming, what I call programming as a second career path, just because we all love acronyms and because I need a succinct way to describe this and keep referring to it. So what I'm talking about is entering the field of programming later in life, non-traditionally. And I'm sure a lot of us here probably either have or are planning on that. So I think it's a pretty topical subject. So I'm going to talk about some of the challenges and some of the opportunities or positives about becoming a programmer maybe later in life or in a non-traditional manner. So yeah, some of us decided later in life to become programmers, software engineers, what have you. Boot camps, code camps are really common nowadays. Or we went to like PCC. I'm not really gonna argue the merits of one or the other, or get involved in those nitty-gritty details. But just some of us have different paths towards becoming programmers. And some of us have even landed a job and passed the horrible whiteboard interview process. I love this this image here. It captures my feelings very succinctly. So now we've gotten that out of the way, I'm going to talk a little bit how our path, my path, differs from traditional ways that people become programmers, software developers, what have you. So here's my slide of Wayback Machine screenshot of Slashdot from 1998. So some people were commenting and reading on Slashdot in the 90s while they were learning PHP and Linux, or they they were maybe they were in freshman CS majors at this time, but so that's basically what I'm contrasting my path with is, people who have that traditional, I graduated from college, I'm 22 years old with a CS degree, or, someone who, I'm a 19-year-old who knows PHP and Linux, and I live in the Bay Area in the late 90s, and I've just written my meal ticket for life right there. So I'm not going to talk about those ways of becoming a programmer or being in tech. I'm going to talk about, different ways, like, for those of us who decided for various reasons that we wanted to become programmers or software developers. So since this is a Portland Python conference, let's talk about Portland a little. So how many of you are from Oregon? Okay, quite a few. Okay, so I thought a good half. So am I actually, and sometimes I feel like I'm very much one of the few people who is these days. But so this slide talks about there was a recession in the early 2000s, and it was not as bad as the Great Recession, but it was still sort of a crappy time to look for a job, especially living in Portland. And like me, I had an economics degree. What are you going to do with an economics degree? Well, you're going to look for jobs unsuccessfully in the Portland of the early 2000s. I thought at the time that the only way you could really find a job as a recent college grad back then, a good job, was to have a degree in like nursing or mechanical engineering or something, like really, really practical. And it was a really it seems like it was always in the news, like the Portland area was taking a long time to recover, and it felt like that. But even early 2000s, Portland was a completely different city than it is now, obviously. So that was sort of, that was, I ended up joining the Army, so that was sort of my solution to that, partially. But so we've, Portland's changed a lot since then. And if you go to places like r/Portland, or places like that where people are complaining about the growth of tech and how people are being priced out and gentrified, one of the sarcastic refrains is just learn to code. If I'm going to have to move out to Troutdale or Sandy or Boring, but or learn to code. That's what everyone does. You sort of see that in the Bay Area too. I lived for 11 years in the Bay Area recently, so it's a touchy subject, obviously, for a lot of people. So back then in the early 2000s, like if you mentioned you worked in tech in Portland, you probably worked like in the, I hate this phrase, Silicon Forest, like with Tektronix, Intel, all the companies like you associated with tech back then, like hardware jobs mostly. And I had Portland Trailblazers 1991, so I was like, what's really funny is that I saw like Rip City like being advertised this last year, like. It's like, did I go back in time 25 years? It's, now, it's, there's never been a better time to be a software developer in Portland, but, Intel cuts are a setback. Yeah, so we saw, in the news a couple months ago that Intel is cutting back, but, it's still a good job market for people who want to be in tech. So, it's, there could be a lot worse places to look for a job as a software engineer if you, are just coming off of a coding boot camp and don't have any formal CS background. So the opportunity and the challenge. This really just captures a lot of, this is from the Wikipedia article on Portland, and in 2015, the estimate was 632,309 people live in Portland, which is only which I looked at Seattle's, which is only about 50,000 fewer than Seattle, which is totally mind-blowing to me because Portland, until very recently, Portland was, I always thought it was a small, big city. Like, it was not, like if you're in tech, you work at some hardware job in the suburbs or, you don't, I see all these people as engineers in downtown Portland, and for me, like, you work in downtown Portland, it's like, you work in like the government or law, finance, or something like that. It's like it's because I was gone for 11 years from 2005 to last March. So, it's shocking just how much Portland's changed, and as part of that, you can see that Portland's it's genuinely growing up to be a really big city now, and so there's lots of jobs, but there's also a challenge because lots of people who already have jobs in the Bay Area are moving here. People who have, substantial resumes, and it's going to be, it's going to be competitive, So it's not just that, there's a lot more jobs and a lot more people moving here to compete for those jobs. So, but the fact that we're even at this point is quite amazing to me. Like last March, right after I moved back to Portland, I saw a billboard downtown for a coding boot camp, and I practically ran off the road because, I thought that's like the Bay Area, not Portland, and I was very naive, and because whenever I'd come back to Portland, it was only for like a day or two, and I'd never really absorbed how much Portland had changed since then. So that is the opportunity and the challenge. So one of the challenges that people face who come from non-traditional backgrounds is filling in gaps in our knowledge. I was in the Army, and after I got out, I was able to use the post 9/11 GI Bill, which is a really great thing to have. You just have to join the military is the only prerequisite, right? Easy if you want to get that. So I went to De Anza College. I don't know if you're familiar with that in Cupertino. I took almost every CS class that I could because basically I had tuition. I think it paid for like 80% of tuition based on my time in service, which is at a community college, is practically nothing. And they also paid me about $1,500 a month tax-free as a housing allowance based off of the price of housing in Cupertino, which is pretty good. So I was able to do that, and but obviously there are gaps in my knowledge, literal gaps, because I could take every class at De Anza, but it's not the same as a BS in computer science from San Jose State. So and I don't, and prior to this, I didn't have, I had an economics degree, so I did some statistical tomfoolery, but, I didn't, have a really deep CS background prior to this. So, there are gaps in my knowledge, and that's, I think that's probably representative of a lot of people coming to programming as a second career. You're going to have some gaps, probably more so than a lot of people do. And so that is a challenge. How do we fill in those gaps? So, my answer is that we have to self-study and a lot. Now there's a, I don't know, if you want to go to places like Hacker News, you'll see that they're always recommending, you got to be programming, 24/7, eat, breathe, and poop programming. But, and there's a substantial backlash against that. And a lot of criticisms of tech/geek/programming culture that, you shouldn't have to be, you shouldn't have to spend your free time absorbed in programming and software engineering and tech. I greatly sympathize with that because, it's, on the one hand, it places a lot of the burden of learning on you, whereas I guess, at one time, a company would pay you to learn, to train you on the job. Of course, that was back when you had 1,000-page manuals that came with PCs on how to program in BASIC, but, there's a certain anti-worker onus, I guess, I don't like there, and it's, and on the other hand, in other jobs, I mean, if you have a civil engineering friend, do they build bridges in their spare time? Do they, do you see civil engineers with civil engineering textbooks working out of problems in their spare time at Starbucks? I mean, it's a really annoying. I think it's really annoying, and I hate it. But at the same time, for me, it's how do I? I can't not. I don't feel like I have that background and experience to not do that. So that is a challenge, and I currently do have a tech job programming as an engineer, and the last thing in the world I want to do when I get home is to program more. I really don't want to do that. So any progress I make in my own personal projects, is a lot. Even a little bit, I tend to get excited about because it's just I don't want to do my job in my spare time. So, and I agree that this is a very horrible attitude to have, but I think there's a bit that maybe for me is necessary. I don't know how to. I'm not sure how to fix that. Other than I can win the lottery and I can go back to school for a BS, and I don't have to worry about working ever again. I don't know. So I guess to end my first part of my speech, I have this slide. Why is this important? Well, this is a neat little graph showing the unemployment rate in Oregon over the last 15 years, showing, you can see the early 2000s recession. Things get a little bit better, but then the Great Recession hits. Then now it's getting a lot better. So, we're starting to get back to the point we were back in the go-go late 90s. So things are going great, but at the same time, how solid is the growth in tech in Portland? All these companies that didn't exist a few years ago. I mean, how solid are these jobs? It's great that all these people are moving here with good-paying jobs and pricing people out of, housing west of 205. But at the same time, I'm being sarcastic. But at the same time, if there, you can never predict economics. But if there is another downturn, another recession, what's going to happen? I mean, is there going to be more competition for jobs then? Probably. And how does that if I don't have I didn't graduate when I was 22, and I've worked in the industry for the last decade. So, my resume is going to be a little bit leaner than some people. So is that going to be an issue? I mean, is it going to be more competitive? And I don't know, but I tend to be, I worry a lot about things. So it's I wonder about that. I mean, what is the growth of tech in Portland? Is it solid, or I mean, and I feel sort of, and I guess I should come clean that when I moved here from the Bay Area, I was working in tech in the Bay Area as a programmer, although for a nonprofit, and I didn't make enough money to really afford the Bay Area. So I moved to Portland where I could afford the local economy, and I don't work at a startup. I work in a fairly traditional enterprisey atmosphere with using .NET, and so there's always in my company, the primary product in my company is not software. So there's always you don't have to work for a software company. You don't need to work for a startup. So there's always 630,000 people live in Portland now. There's always going to be companies that are hiring programmers whose primary product is not software. So if you really look harder, I mean, when the next recession hits, there's probably if you it may not be too bad, but at the same time, you got to keep your skills up. You got to, I don't know. I just wish I could come home and read a book and watch TV and veg, but I keep thinking about the future. I don't want to be in a position where I was in the early 2000s looking for looking for a job in a horrible market without practical skills, and it's a crux. It really is. So enough of the negative naysaying here. Let's talk about. Now, there are some, for those of us who are entering the field later in life, what do we bring to the table that's positive? And there's a lot of things. There's, some of us may have had experience working really crappy, poorly paid jobs just to get by, and I worked at Taco Bell in college for extra money. I mean, I worked at Taco Bell as my main paycheck to support myself kind of job. So, I mean, some of us have those experiences, which I think is a big, it helps out a lot because there's a lot of, and I'll talk about this a lot a few slides down the road, but, there's a lot of classism in tech, and sometimes I think people who do work in tech, who have good paying jobs, who have worked in tech their whole adult lives, don't realize how good they have it. Like, your woes as a developer who makes six figures they're legitimate real woes, but they're the woes of, they're different types of woes than what a lot of people do to get by with. Especially, the people in Portland who are, the tech boom is, that's gone past them. They've not been able to make it in it. So age, so a 22-year-old with a CS degree gets a job, making $90,000 a year at Google and Mountain View, or that's great, but 22-year-olds don't have a lot of maturity. So I don't want to. Okay, I don't want to be too blanket statement-y there, but a 32-year-old is going to have a much different background, view of life experiences, whatever, than a 22-year-old does. So age, maturity, just maturity, and hopefully a little bit of wisdom. And some of us who do become software engineers or programmers have tech experiences in other scientific and quantitative fields, and we move into tech full time. And so there is some domain knowledge that's transferred over, and so that's helpful because because sometimes people who've worked have a traditional CS background don't have that actual domain knowledge in those fields. So that's another plus. I don't want to discount that as well. So so those are all positive things though. So it's not all like you don't need to be a job market prepper and be worried about it. It's all the time. There's some positives about it. We should all. I sort of say the royal we, because I think a lot of us here are probably in my position. Should be, there's a lot we do contribute to the field positively. So I'm going to, in this vein here of what we bring to the field, I'm going to share with you some of the experiences of my own life prior to working in tech, and how that relates to all this. So without further ado, so 2 examples from my own life that I bring to programming. So that's me on the left, wearing the uniform. So I was in the Army, Defense Language Institute, City of Monterey, California. So yeah, that was a whole different me, literally. So how does my experience in the Army contribute to, what I bring to tech now in Portland in 2016? So a couple things. That's my mom right there. I think this was the day I graduated from a Korean school there. So good times. So being in being in the Bay Area, if you're interested in meeting geeky queer people in the Bay Area, almost none of them are going to be veterans, at least the ones under 40. So that's something I brought from my own background that a lot of people didn't have that experience, and it's a big culture gap. I guess being in the trans community as well, being a veteran younger than 40, but being in the looking for friends who are geeky and into tech, you're going to have not a lot of people with that experience. Let's talk about DARPA a bit. So I see articles all the time, like Hacker News and all these people sharing on their social media feeds about DARPA doing something really cool and whatnot, and that's cool. But it's like the D in DARPA stands for generals in Washington, D.C., basically. So my opinion is that a lot of people who like really cool government-funded mil-tech stuff don't realize that tech is often used in ways that they can't really fathom. So it's, in the Bay Area, it's not as much as there used to be, but like Palantir, Peter Thiel's shadowy surveillance company thingamajiggy. There's Lockheed Martin in Sunnyvale that makes missiles, I think. There's sort of, when it comes to like intelligence stuff, there's a fine line between, regular tech jobs and tech jobs that support the military or intelligence communities. And I think a lot of people sometimes, DARPA makes this cool AI robot, but what's that going to be used for in the future? I mean, to me, it feels like, I don't know, that's going to be used to kill people eventually, and I don't know, even the nature of technology is such that this stuff is always going to happen, but I just wish there was that realization about that. So I wish, I don't know, that's my very opinionated opinion about DARPA. So let's talk about Whole Foods Market Palo Alto. Wonderful place. I worked there for 4 years, starting at the height of the Great Recession after I got out of the Army. Good times. Why am I talking about this place? Because I had this experience right before I got my first tech job of working here. So this is something something I bring, and I think that typifies a lot of like people who enter programming later in life. What they bring, they may have worked really crappy, horrible jobs just to get by, and it's yeah, I don't even know where to start. Well, I do know where to start here. So right after I got out of the Army, the Great Recession was just kicking off and I needed a job. So I ended up here. And, at the height of the Great Recession, we needed to, it's like you're just happy to have any job at all, basically. And I'd always worry about coming into work and it'd be my last day. I'd screw up somehow. Like one of those horrible customers would complain, or I would, oh sorry, you need to scan so many items per transaction. You're not scanning them fast enough, or whatever. I was always worried, sick to death about that. And so my experience working there was that I ended up I still hate Palo Alto. I don't know if you're even from Palo Alto, but I hate it so much. Being treated like crap by customers, a lot of them who do work in tech. There's a lot of tech startups in downtown Palo Alto, as well as really, really, really rich people who shop there. Like I saw Steve Jobs would come through my line a couple of times. And it's like a lot of, some of the younger people do, but treat you better, like customers do. But, there's definitely a sense of like, the customers do sort of look down upon the people who work there sometimes. And yeah, and a lot of people who do work in tech there are, VC types coming in off Sand Hill Road for lunch, or people who work at, senior vice president at Cisco or Oracle or whatever. I mean, it really got me incredibly jaundiced about a lot of things. Tech, for starters. In the Bay Area, to me, it was like if you wanted. So in the Bay Area, it's like if you wanted to find geeky, tech-minded friends, they were either like. Well, in my social circles, people were either really poor and struggling to get by with the help of really well-to-do friends, or people were really well-to-do. Like, you want to find cool geeks in Santa Clara County? Well, half of them are going to be poor, really poor, and just, escaping the Central Valley, or they're going to be making really, really good money. And there's a lot of, so in my own personal life, I noticed, there's a really big disparity in wealth between, in my friends' circles, and it would make me really, even around my friends, like in tech, like I could talk, leftist politics with them, and they would agree with me on a lot of things. But my experience this year really colored my perception of just being around a lot of tech people, because it's like, you work in it's like, people in Palo Alto are not representative of, all of Silicon Valley or the Bay Area, but it's hard not to feel like, it's like my livelihood is in your hands. You people don't complain about trivial shit. Sorry, my language, but about about work there. So please don't leave bad reviews on Yelp or anything. Just let me get through the day and get my paycheck and survive. And it just I don't know. I guess there's just a big. And a lot of people like. I think a lot of people in tech, even like garden variety engineers who do make good money, don't realize how good they have it. And it's like, and now I'm sort of, now that I've made it a bit, that's always in the back of my mind. Like, I don't, I think, ironically, I moved to Portland because, I feel like I'm displacing people now and I'm moving here, but it's just, I don't know. It's when you work as a middle class engineer, you have your own set of middle class woes, which are different from poor working class woes. But I think there is still a better set of woes to have, and I know that. So I'm incredibly jaundiced about class issues, and I'm not going to hold back from calling people out, even if, I feel like you're a really good, solid leftist progressive who has some blind spots with regards to wealth and class privilege. And how much money you make, because a lot of people make a lot of good money in the Valley, even just regular engineers, and it's like, yeah, it's something, all right. Let me tell you. So that's a very strongly held attitude that I have based on my own experience. So to summarize, there are some challenges that we face coming into programming, later in life, non-traditionally. We need to, be cognizant of the Portland area and how it's changed and the economics of it. But, there's also some positive things, and we should all be happy about our own life's experiences, that we bring to the field. And, that just by itself contributes to the diversity of the field. So 3 cheers for diversity. So I guess that's my talk. Any